that we may also prosper and be kept alive, as is the case today. And if we are to carefully obey all his commands before you who are our power, as he has commanded us, that will be our brightness. Chapter 7, verse 1.
Chapter 17.
17.
Mm-hmm. You read chapter 16. You were in chapter 16, verse 18.
Chapter 6.
Okay, no. We're going chapter 16, verse 18, because it's talking about the judges, and we're going to read into chapter 17, 8 verses, please. Okay, come on, that's all right. Let's read from there.
Devarim chapter 16, verse 18. Appoint judges and officials for each of your tribes in every town you who your power is giving you, and they shall judge the people fairly. Do not pervert justice or show partiality. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the upright.
Mm-hmm.
Follow justice and justice alone, so that you may live and possess the land you who your power is giving you. Do not set up any wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you built to Yahuwah your power, and do not erect a sacred stone, for these Yahuwah hates.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 17. Do not sacrifice to Yahuwah your power an ox or sheep that has any defect or flaw in it, for that will be detestable to him. If a man or woman living among you, of the towns Yahuwah gives you, is found doing evil in the eyes of Yahuwah your power in violation of his covenant, contrary to my command, has worshipped other power, bring down to them or to the sun or the moon or the stars or the sky, and this has been brought to your attention, then you must investigate it thoroughly. If it is true and it has been proved that this detestable thing has been done in Yasharal, take the man or woman who has done this evil deed to your city gate and stone that person to death. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, this is Moshe giving out the decrees, the commands, and setting forth order. Okay? And this is a time where they are appointing judges. They are appointing judges. Judges do what? Judges rule. Judges make sure that there is a balance. This subject follows immediately on the exhortation to appear at Jerusalem on the 3 festivals, to emphasize that although every male went 3 times a year to the Kadesh city, where he could consult the judicial authorities, it was still obligatory to have judges in every city. Officers to execute the verdict of the judges. So you just didn't have judges, you also had officers. There had to be a balance. No. So that which was, whatever the verdict was that was passed down, you had the officers that would handle it. And they had them in each town. Tribe by tribe. The phrase will shalt thou make thee. Judges were to be appointed for each tribe separately, as well as for each town. So you had more than one judge. You had it for the town and you had it for the tribes. When you have that many people that's walking in truth, you can't help but succeed. But when there becomes a breakdown in the ranks and in the breakdown of truth, this is where you start having problems. So as we continue to look how Yahuwah began to build our governmental system, you have to understand there were checks and balances. So if we would have followed that, if our ancestors would have followed that, none of the stuff that we're experiencing now, we would experience it. But that's will. When people fall out of the will of Yahuwah and desire to do their own will, then you start seeing a whole lot of stuff take place. Thou shalt not respect persons. The judge must treat both litigants alike during the proceedings. He should not let one stand and the other sit. In other words, it doesn't matter who it is. They both had to stand just like they were both being judged accordingly. So you had to understand they could not take bribes like today. If you're going to judge a thing, you have to judge it and not be partial. Doesn't matter who it is. If it's Mishpachot, if it's a friend, if it's whoever, don't want to say enemy, but if it's somebody that you may not be that close with or whatever, you still have to judge accordingly. It still has to be done right. Neither shalt thou take a gift, even if the judge intends to act impartially and pronounces a just verdict. Words of the upright, that is the words which have been described as upright. The judgments revealed on Sinai. Justice shalt thou follow. This is addressed to the litigants, that they should always speak the truth, and the repetition of justice notes whether it would be to their advantage or disadvantage, that they should seek a reliable tribunal, to decide their case. The repeated word justice is an exhortation both to the judges and the litigants. You know, when you hear, have you ever seen Judge Judy or any of these, Judge Mathis or Judge Joe Brown, any of those judges that were up there, and they say the litigants coming in and the judge, and they would have them come in. If you notice, everybody was standing before the judge. Nobody was sitting unless you were really not a important person at that moment. Unless you were a witness to something, then you would sit until it was your time. But both parties had to stand because you had to basically present your case. And so Yahuwah is saying through Moshe, in order for this to be fair, everybody must stand, because everybody at that time, watch this, are equal. Nobody is innocent and nobody is guilty until all of the matter is heard. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. This had to be set up in this manner. All right. Let's read. Excuse me.
At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. The hands of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hands of all the people, so all that put the evil away from among you. If there arise a matter too hard for thee in judgment, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, and between stroke and stroke, being matters of controversy within thy gates, thou shalt arise and get thee up into the place which Yahuwah thy power shall choose. And you shall come unto the priests of the Levites and unto the judge, and shall be in those days, and inquire, and they shall show you the sentence of judgment. And you shall do according to the sentence which that place which Yahuwah shall choose shall show you. You shall observe to do according to all they inform you, according to all the sentence, to the law which they shall teach you, and according to the judgment which they shall tell you, you shall do. You shall not decline from the sentence which they shall show you, to the right hand nor to the left. And the man that will do presumptuously, and will not hearken unto the priest that stand to my minister, there be Yahuwah thy power, or unto the judge, even that man shall die. And Yahuwah shall put away the evil from Yahshua. And all the people shall hear and fear, and do more presumptuously. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now, once again, it's important. Hold on. Once again, it's important that we understand the order that is being presented here. Everything that's taking place, justice, and equality, because they were getting ready to inherit the land, but in order to keep the land, they had to follow the instructions. Now listen what he says back in chapter 16, where he is saying, thou shalt not plant. One is guilty of a transgression by merely planting an Asherah without worshiping it. This is a common case which judges will be called upon to hear. Asherah. Any tree planted at the entrance of a house of worship is called Asherah. The planting of an Asherah near the altar was forbidden because it was a heathen custom and was frequently done. So, excuse me, they were not to even do anything that symbolically even resembled any type of worship, any of those things, because it caused problems. No, none of it was to be done. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's like how you have today people that tattoos, for instance, even though this is not dealing with tattoos, you still have to look at it, where he tells us not to tattoo our bodies. We're not to tattoo, even though we know he's talking about putting markings on your body for the dead. It's still the same thing. You're not supposed to mark your body, period. If you're not supposed to mark it for the dead, surely you're not supposed to mark it for the living. But people still do it. And people say, but you know, it wasn't that much. I just did a little bit. You're still not supposed to do it, regardless if you do it on your foot, regardless if you do it on your hand, your shoulder. Someone said, well, nobody will see it but me. Yeah, but it's still against the instructions of our Yahuwah. So these things were not permitted. And so the tree was not to be planted in front of a house of worship. But have you noticed when you see a lot of churches a lot of churches have trees.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, once again, there was a reason that they weren't, because that was a custom in that time, because they would worship those as Asherah poles. Somebody would say, well, we can't have greenery. Of course you can have greenery. It's just where you position it, how you put it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. So you have to be careful. Yahuwah, thy Savior, hated. Although the pillar was used for the worship of Yahuwah at the time of the patriarchs, it was now prohibited because of its association with idolatry. So long as it is not for idolatry worship, it is not forbidden. But if you notice, he said not to do it, correct?
Correct.
Remember when I told you in the beginning, as we continue to study, you will hear different interpreters that will interpret it in many different ways. One will say it's okay, while the other will say it's not okay. I tend to go with what the writing says. Don't do it. If it says don't plant it in front, don't plant it in front. Don't plant it in back either.
Go.
Just don't do it, because that's what the first instructions were. At the mouth of two witnesses. Now, when we get into chapter 17, we begin to see the reason why it's important that there be more than one witness. Because you can't establish really an argument with one witness, because what if that person is lying?
Yeah. Go.
You have to have more than one witness. And so this is what Yahuwah is bringing forth. And in the first part, he said, thou shalt not sacrifice unto you, Yahuwah thy Savior, an ox or a sheep wherein is a blemish, even any evil, for this is an abomination unto Yahuwah thy Savior. Now you have to understand, verse 1 establishes a principle and establishes our character in the way we're supposed to govern ourselves. Because watch this. If you're not going to give him a blemished animal, then you're not going to lie to him. If you're willing to give him an animal or any offering that is not your best, then you're not going to give to him your best, and neither are you going to stand and speak with him in truth. So this is being established through Abba Yahuwah, through Moshe, to give the people instructions and specific directions. You have to understand all the